All right. This is going to be fun. Hello out there, and today's video is going to be a comparison video between the newest Ganzo Firebird, which is this FH71 that I reviewed recently and I'll link to down below, and then also the FH41, which is another really popular model from their most recent line. And guys, this video is 100% a product of you guys. All of the comments that you had in the video about this FH71 talking about how I needed to try the 41. So many comments, and you know, there are people who generally agree on some things in the comments, and I get a number of suggestions, but I mean, there were a bunch of people who were saying try the 41, try the 41, try the 41. And then I've got to give credit to my buddy Steve Kluver, who a lot of you probably heard of. If you have a knife channel, you almost definitely have, because Steve is one of those guys who just is really supportive of a number of reviewers out there, really active in the community, and he contacted me after I posted this first video and said, hey, if you don't have a 41, let me send you one, and you can check it out and see for yourself. And so thank you to Steve for sending me this knife, gifting me this knife. It's awesome. He actually picked it out and picked out the green G10, which is a beautiful color. So I'm really stoked about it, and I really like the knife. So we're obviously going to get into the comparison, but first, first we do have this issue to deal with, and this is something, guys. I mean, I talked in my review about how this D2 is a little bit more spotty than D2 that I've seen in the past, and you know, I don't know the details of knife steel and what constitutes one thing versus another, and how specific things have to be in order to be called a certain steel, and if there's any variation elementally or chemically, I guess. But I've never had D2 rust the way this Ganzo D2 rusts, apart from a couple Tucson's, which is interesting, you know, and I've heard references to Chinese D2 versus American D2. I don't know if it's different. I just know that I've never had problems with Benchmade's D2 or Kershaw's or other companies like this. Now, that said, I have already seen some spots popping up on this newer 41. They wiped off very easily with just a alcohol prep pad. And what I know happened with the 71 is I used it a lot, and then I wiped it off with just my fingers. I just wiped off the visible gunk, and I'm sure it was the oils in my fingers that just caused all that spotting. But again, never seen that before in anything else. So let's see if we can just get this wiped off with a prep pad, even though it's been sitting on there for over a day. Let's see what kind of results we can get just doing that, and see what happens here. I might have to bust out the flitz and the Dremel, but it's looking like a lot of this is just wiping right off. So, you know, it's one of those things where, all right, I've said already that the 8CR, you know, 8CR 13 MOV requires a little bit of maintenance as far as sharpening, and that this D2 definitely has outperformed my experiences with 8CR. But it requires just maybe a different type of maintenance and just constant watch. And let's see. I mean, we're pretty good here. I might need to get in there with the Dremel, and I mean, there's a couple spots where it's still a little spotty, but I was just doing this basically on camera, not really rubbing hard or anything, and it looks like all of that came up. So maybe that'll be information that'll be useful to some of you if you're interested in getting one of these knives. Again, you don't have to completely prevent the rust, because it will come up as long as you don't let it get in there and get pitted. But I mean, you can see, yeah, could have become an issue. So anyway, guys, now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about these two knives, and let's talk about the hype that I experienced when you told me about the 41. I mean, I knew that this was going to be a pretty darn good knife just because so many people had good things to say about it. And it is. I mean, it's really good, and it's really similar in just the basic philosophy and construction to the 71. But obviously, we do have some design differences, and we'll go through all of that and go through my preferences, and then I'll let you know which one I like the most at the end. So Starting with the blades, we're rocking D2 on both of these. One thing that I really like about the 41, I really like how thin this knife is ground. It's super thin. It's an excellent slicer. Has a very traditional, almost kind of like shape to it. I love the blade shape. So I'm not going to say anything bad about the blade shape on either of these knives. This one is a little bit more just like aesthetically my style when it comes to, you know, that big plunge down and just the way it looks at the tip. Not quite as thin ground as the 41, but I mean, I've used this one a lot more and it certainly performs, so I haven't had any issues with that. Just aesthetically looking, I do sort of, I don't know, I don't really love the hole here. If there's anything like nitpicky about this 71, it's that it's not a functional hole for opening. Which we talked about in the review. You sort of have to dig in and it's not really meant for that. So it's just there maybe just to pop it out if you're doing it two-handed or something like that. Or if you're digging in and, you know, but it's not, I don't know. It's not the best placement, but overall the design of the blade for me, even though the grind on this I think is a little bit better just for like slicing and stuff, I do prefer the 71. Now, I do want to take a look at just the level of execution on these knives. And one of the things that people have talked about with these is that they just blow a lot of like the cheaper budget stuff out of the water. And so often I think when we're talking about stuff like that, people just focus on materials, you know, but it's all the little details that they do. I mean, when you look at like a Kershaw or a CRKT that's in like the $20 or $30 range, there's not so many of them anymore. But when you look at those, you know, sometimes they're ground and like sharpened unevenly. This one looks pretty darn solid. You know, you have like dead spots a lot of times on the blade. The plunge grind looks wonky. Jimping is either crappy or non-existent. And both of these knives have all of those things. So it's just something that, you know, all those little details, it's not just D2 and G10 and bearings and nice smooth action. It's attention to detail and the level of execution with those small details that impresses me on both of these knives. And yeah, I guess a lot of the stuff with Ganzo lately. All right, as we move on back, let's talk about the jimping and the way this knife is in hand. So one thing that I prefer is I prefer this raised ramp on the 71. So I really do like that. It helps it lock into my hand really well. And you're going to be getting some weird dirty glare just because of, let me see if I can get that wiped off real quick. See if we can get a more consistent look on this blade. That's a little better. All right, so yeah, in hand, just that slight elevation upward, you know, as we get to the spine of the knife, I really do like that, and I prefer that feel. And then when you're choking up, having that downward slope, almost like a thumb depression, it's an extremely comfortable knife for me. The 41 is comfortable as well. The jimping is a little bit on the sharper side. It's still very grippy. For choking up, I mean, you could actually use that jimping further down the thumb, although it might be a little bit painful. The one thing that I'll say for some people, I think if you had larger hands, the 41 might be a little bit better for you just because of the way that the handle is designed. You have more room, you know, it's going to be more roomy for people with larger hands. This one here, you know, it just sort of lends itself to a specific size. And so if you have larger hands, you might start to have issues, you know, on the backside here and with the comfort level that you might have. One other thing when it comes to comfort level, and someone commented, and it wasn't on a Ganzo video, and actually while we're looking at this, you can see the difference between the two jimping, the two sets of jimping here. The comfort level, I carry my knives in my right pocket, so I carry the clips right side, but I cut with my left hand, and so I'll usually pull it out of the pocket and move it to another hand. And so when people talk about hot spots with clips and stuff, like clips digging into their palm, a lot of times in my reviews, I just fail to mention that because I don't experience it because I actually am cutting like this, which is a little bit weird, but the clip will give me a different kind of point of contact. And that's sort of why I do that. Is just a story for another day. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but there could be, you know, a hot spot with this clip digging into the palm just a little bit and this one as well. But again, I've used these knives both for a pretty decent amount of time. This one here, the 41, and an excessive amount, the 71. And, you know, I wouldn't have experienced that because I just don't hold a knife that way. So you might have to go somewhere else for that information. But again, when it comes to the jimping and the overall ergos, for me, definitely the 71 is the winner. I can completely understand someone preferring the 41 though. And then as we move on back, the G10, it is really similar to G10. It's basically the same stuff, different color, different like contouring and shape. For me, yeah, I'm still going to go with the 71 here. I really just like the look of it. You can see this one, the 41 is more like chamfered, and you have specific like faces here as we transition to the top. And then we have more just a rounded kind of look to the 71. They're both really good. And you're going to hear me say 71, 71, 71, but it's really just a matter of preference. So as we continue to move on back, I think I might actually like the look of the backspacer, how it's more like flush down on the 41 versus the 71. But again, that's sort of inconsequential, not really all that important when it comes to how this knife functions. Then we have the same clip, so it's not really going to be an issue there. Lockup on both of these knives is absolutely excellent. The action on both of them is absolutely excellent. So you've seen the 71, the 41. I mean, it's really good. 71, really good. So, I mean, I would almost say that we're comparing apples to oranges here, but it really isn't that kind of thing. It's that both of these knives are so good that if I'm going to say, oh, well, I prefer this or that, it's almost not with a like measurable reason, if that makes sense. There's nothing about either of these two knives that when I look at it, I say this one is designed or manufactured or just superior head and shoulders above the other for X reason. It's really just a matter of personal preference. If you prefer a thinner blade, you know, taking a look at these like blade stocks and how they are down at the bottom, if you prefer that thinness, I mean, you can actually see the difference just like from this distance. If you prefer that, then the 41 will be the way to go. It is a little bit more traditional looking, and you know, I can completely understand that. Bigger hands, this or that, you know, a number of different reasons why you might look at it in a certain way. But for me, I think they're both home runs, but this one, the 71, is like out of the park, right up my alley with exactly what I am looking for. Again, we might have rust issues with both of them, but I don't think that there is anything significant to make me hold back from wanting to purchase either of these knives at the $25 price point. You know, so I need to say thank you to everyone who had suggested the 41. And again, another special thank you to my buddy Steve Kluver, who's the one who actually sent it, because I mean, I picked up the 71 and I thought, man, Firebird is here and they are legit. And I think I might be on board with what they're doing, because they have really, really done something special with the 71. And then once I got the 41, I really realized that the 71 isn't a fluke. I mean, they can make a good knife. They can make a very good knife. And so I'm excited to see what they do next, and I'm excited to get more models from them. And yeah, I'm thankful for all of you for suggesting it and getting me hyped up about the Firebird brand again. So any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. Sorry I couldn't give like a definitive this knife is better than the other, but really, I mean, they're both so good that it's really hard to say one way or the other, but I obviously have my preference here in the 71. But let me know any thoughts that you might have, or any other models that you think I need to check out, and I will talk with you soon, guys. Thanks very much for watching, and take care. Have a good one.